Rise, Nigeria. Rise, Nigeria. Rise, Nigeria. If Nigeria rise, we must also arise and rise up to the occasion to make Nigeria great. It is there is no them. It is we when we talk about government. It is the government of the people. And that means we all have a role to play. You're welcome once again to the Daybreak Show for this beautiful Wednesday morning. And of course, this is Citizens from, like I mentioned earlier, Aghemerio and I will be anchoring this particular segment all the way to 11. On Monday, we started the discourse about corruption and the ongoing anti-corruption campaign and how we are supposed to win this war. We focused on the angle of the statement credited to the Speaker of the House of Representatives, talking about the fact that we might not be able to eliminate corruption in Nigeria. And that brought up the issues of how endemic and how well entrenched uh, corruption and its tentacles are in Nigeria. Yesterday, it was about looking at the anti-corruption war uh, in the eye of religion, especially the church, the role of the church in fighting corruption. On the heels of the statement credited to former President Olusegun Obasanjo about the role the church must play in fighting corruption. Well, this morning we're going a step further in this ongoing anti-corruption war and how we must fight it to a standstill. But now we want to look at the critical, strategic, and pivotal sector, and that is the civil service. A lot of people have said that politicians will not be able to carry out many of the nefarious, criminal, corrupt practices without the complicity of the civil servant. And some are even of the opinion that top civil servants are even richer sometimes than the political leadership. Uh, is it true? Do you agree with that statement? Can we truly throw away the baby with the bathwater and say that the civil service have not done anything to ensure development, to ensure growth, stability, and of course even curb corruption of the political elite? So we want to look at this anti-corruption war once again, the role of the civil service, and how well have they served this nation. It is very pertinent that we look at this, Aghemerio.
Of course, it's very important because when we talk about governance and we talk about government, we cannot take out the civil service. Okay, it's part and parcel of governance and government.
Yes.
And they play a pivotal role in making sure that everything goes on smoothly and everything runs smoothly in government when government is concerned, and that's why the role is very very key. It can't be ruled out. And of course, when we now talk about the roles and the way they're playing out their roles, can we say that truly they're doing things that ought to be done? And when we talk about corruption too, a civil service is almost immediately pointed at because some have actually said it that corruption cannot exist
Without them.
any government without the civil service and without civil servant. How true is this? All right, we should also be able to look at that this morning.
Beyond the issue of how corrupt or how complicit the civil service is when it comes to corruption, some are even of the opinion that they've not contributed much, or they're no longer contributed much. All they do is fill up the space and the numbers of our bloated civil service, and then people just go to the office, waste away time, and then at the end of the month, collect the salary, and that is also inefficiency and corruption at its peak. Well, all these many more, all these and many more. We'll be looking at this morning. We have someone qualified to look at this, a senior citizen himself, and a retired permanent secretary, the top civil servant in Ogun State. I'm talking of no one else but Alhaji Abdul-Fatai Opebiyi. You're welcome to the Daybreak Show, sir.
Thank you very much.
Alhaji, not so encouraging verdict that Nigerians have passed on the civil service. That is one particular area where you have excelled in becoming a permanent secretary or retiring as same. Would you say you are happy with all this coming from different quarters about the civil service?
Well, thank you very much. Uh, if I say I'm indifferent, that would be a too damning answer. But why should I be so? The society that is passing a verdict is itself the creator of the problem. I would say that the corruption in the civil service is directly proportional to that in the society. That is, when you have a corrupt society, you can have a good civil servant, and vice versa. But looking at things as they are, so many factors are responsible. I don't know whether you want me to go to them right away.
Yes, of course. It's pertinent that we look at these factors and try to bring them down.
Okay. Now, the rot in the service. I've mentioned the rot in the society. And when you look at that, you see the unnecessary attachment of value to money and wealth possessions. See how people elevate money into such a high pedestal that even people who are dishonest, really they acquire wealth. You find even the traditional rulers giving them chieftaincy titles, even the society hailing them. You can see an example of somebody who came from prison and was honored. There was even a service where his virtues were extolled. That's one. Two, the input into the service. You will see that the service has never been like this. It was never like this. I could remember when we started working. I started working in 1981 at the Ministry of Health first, and then Ministry of Information first, posted to health because I started as information officer. But when I crossed into admin cadre, I got to the Ministry of Health as press officer to the Commissioner for Health. And after crossing, I was made to function at the Ministry of Finance. That's just to give you background to the story I'm alluding to. I worked there between 1982 and 84. And during that time, I could remember once somebody gave me maybe 5 naira. I was afraid that this man would corrupt me, want to put me in problem. So I rushed to my director, the head of that section there, to tell him, "Come and look at this man. He has given me 5 naira. And I don't know why." I said, "Yeah, it's just a gift. It's just a gift, don't worry. I'll spend it." Well, so you could see. Can you imagine anybody doing like that today? No. Even if it's given 1 million naira, will he go to his boss?
Even a messenger might even refuse to even push a file.
Even if you're not giving
without getting something.
So that will put you in the background of what we met when we got into the service. But now people are recruited in the service not using the parameters that were formerly used. Nepotism, I know you, you know me, and things like that. My relative, all those are now inputs, as opposed to bringing the proper materials. I was employed when I was far away in Sokoto State doing my youth service without any lobbying. But that's not the case now. So you find that, as they say in computer language, garbage in, garbage out. That's one other factor. Also, the purge that took place in the service several years ago has now alerted people to the fact that no matter what you do, you may end up one day being pushed out without being ready. Whereas there was security of tenure before, and nobody bothered about whatever anybody was doing, so long as it was doing well. Now we'll come to the politicization of the civil service. Civil service has been really politicized. People now try to belong to the party in power. Whereas what we knew when we entered the service was, it was Ajib, any government in power. That's what it's supposed to serve. And we try to do that up to the end of our respective tenures. But the same thing can be said now. I can tell you confidently that at times I will be part of a group and they will start discussing, and I will feel uncomfortable because they'll be discussing political issues which shouldn't be discussed by civil servants. So at several of such fora, I've needed to opt out because I knew that that was enough to get somebody dismissed. But these days, what do you find? They don't even discuss civil servants among themselves alone. They even attend political parties' meetings. So that's another. Lately, the regular payment of emoluments. When you work for a whole month and you don't get a full pay for a full month, definitely, what do you expect? You start cutting corners. So, but regardless of all this, the instruments are still there. The public service rules, the financial instructions, and all what have you. But are they being used? Are the politicians allowing them to be used?
Now, Alhaji, you made a very good case when you talk about the factors that are responsible for the rot, not only in the society but also in the civil service. Let's start with the first one that you mentioned: the love of money. Money may not necessarily be an evil thing, but the love of it and too much love for it will make you craze for it and yearn for it over much, and then you get to do desperate things to get it. Now, would you say that this so-called love of money is as a result of poverty? Because people are poor, so even the little that they have, the little that they think they can get, becomes so precious to them that they are willing to do anything and everything to get it.
Well, you may be right that people craze for money because they don't have it. But you can still remember in the not too long past, that people would prefer to go hungry than to take blood money. I could remember when I was younger that we will run away from people whose wealth we cannot explain. In fact, they will believe that that person has made a money ritual, and if you move too close to him, he will make use of you in his money ritual craze. So, but when you look at it at the other extreme, you see that when people are poor and they are so abjectly poor, they can be attracted with little money. And that will explain also the political problem we are in. Because people give them just 500 naira, they give them bread and they vote for 4 years. Would that be enough for them to eat for 4 years? But because they are abjectly poor, they don't care. Because they know that once the man gets there, it doesn't bother about them again. So, in sum, we'll say that the society, the individual society not getting what they are entitled to has made them very poor and has made them malleable in the hands of the powers that be. And the thing is likely to continue like that, except things are done to redress that situation.
Some people have the opinion, Alhaji, that poverty is an instrument, weapon, or tool in the hand of the political class to make sure that people are perpetually poor, begging, and they come cringing so that it will serve them and their evil strategies when it comes to politics and election. Do you agree with that school of
You're
thought?
perfectly right. Perfectly right. If I'm not mistaken, that would be the principle of Machiavelli. When you make people very poor, they bring to you, they come. Look at a place in Nigeria where people go to, they eat in the morning, they eat in the afternoon. Doesn't mean they don't have any other needs apart from eating. But if that is all they can get, and they can't get any more, say, they'll be satisfied. And maybe someday they too will get into that position. Wishful thinking, you may think, but somehow they think that way, and they feel that they will be expecting if that day comes.
And then the cycle goes on.
Now, when you were talking about factors responsible for all of these, you were able to compare the civil service back then, the old civil service, with what we have today. Now, civil servants in sincere or any developed countries are people of knowledge, integrity, discipline, justice, experience, dedicated, honest. You know, when we talk about honesty, you talk about civil service or the civil servant. But now, let's come down to what we have today, because they ought to be the engine of industrialization and development. Why is it the reverse in the case of Nigeria?
Well, let me just tell you straight that civil servants in Nigeria are as brilliant. I will tell you that when I left school start, I worked in a bank before, UBA. I was there before until I went to university. And when I left the university, the civil service job was not the only one I got. I got appointed as external affairs officer, and I had a 2-1. So definitely, we were not in the depth of qualified people. But when you find yourself,
what about qualified people? Then let's talk about character. What about character?
everything was there at that time. But now, when you look at those things, politicization, if good people are there, for example, let me tell you, I was part of so many interviewing panels. And during those exercises, I met so many people who were even better than what we were looking for. For example, we wanted people to occupy grade level 8. Some people I saw were worth to be on level 10. But that was all I could do about it. I'll just record whatever my assessments were. And the eventual decision to choose to recruit would be for the Civil Service Commission. I'm not trying to insinuate that civil service commissioners are not doing well, but whatever they recruit in their own wisdom is what the state will have. And all those are a product of what we have talked about. Somebody's son, somebody's brother, somebody's uncle, and so on. So definitely, it was not possible for the best candidates to come in. That's just it, to put it bluntly.
Now, would you say that the military played a role in the disintegration of efficient service delivery, devoid of corrupt practices and sharp practices in the civil service?
I would say the only role the military played was the purge. Aside from that, the civil service fared better under the military because they were allowed to do their jobs. But now, the civil service, the politicians have taken over. They're doing the jobs of the civil servants. And you alluded to it when you were talking. You said people were there doing virtually nothing. Why should we employ people to do nothing? Why?
Well, why do you think that is so? Why do you see that many civil servants do less, even though they report to duty at 8 and then they have to leave by 4 in the evening? And then many of them cannot really point out to one or two things they did throughout the day.
Well, to answer your question, let me go down memory lane. As I told you, about 1984, I was in the Ministry of Finance. Then, I was even coming to the office on Saturdays and Sundays to clear my table. If I needed to do that, you know that there was much to do. Also, even until the time I retired, for senior officers, they had to do that. But let's now go to your problem, or to the problem you raised, of people being there and not doing adequate job. There's something in the service. We talk about vacancy situation. That is the number of people who are needed, who are still needed to do the job. We talk about established posts. That is people who are on ground. Now, if anybody wants to employ, he must look at the vacancy situation. Maybe you have vacancy of let us say 10. If you appoint just 2 or 3, definitely they will still do well. But when you go and appoint more than people who are needed, because you did not consult with the civil servants before, maybe you made a political promise that you're going to bring in so number, and you got to the office and you found out that the place couldn't accommodate so many, but you already stuck to your promise, and you go ahead to appoint so many. Near the time I was about to retire, there were people who didn't have chairs to sit on. Civil servants who didn't have chairs to sit on. Those people who didn't have chairs to sit on, how can you give them work? How do you know where they come? How do you know when they leave? So that is a political issue. It's not that politicians cannot assist people, place them in jobs, but there are areas of need. There's an extent to which the civil service can accommodate. There are other areas. Look at the farm settlements. They can still accommodate 10 times the number of people who are there. It's just a question of operationalizing the place, giving those people farms, helping them to plow the place, give them farm inputs. I'm not talking about civil servants. Okay. Anybody who wants to deploy there must know before being employed that is the work he's going to be doing. But you give the people the impression that they're going to work in offices and later want to deploy them to farms, they will definitely not agree. So, but if they had taken the input of civil servants, those people would have advised them that instead of taking all these people into the service, these are other areas they can fit into.
So you definitely disagree with this continuous recruitment exercise of governments to employ people based on campaign promises, which
definitely I disagree. But that's not to say that there are no vacancies in the service. There are areas of great need that need people.
And specialized
people. But you must find out those areas. Look at the number of doctors we have. I don't think they are enough.
Yes.
Whereas if you go ahead employing clerical officers, they will just be loafing around.
Now let's look at the kind of bureaucracy that goes on in the civil service. How has the bureaucracy, added or brought about corruption in that system?
Bureaucracy adding to corruption? Well, it depends on individuals, because even the most effective machinery can be used perversively. But definitely with efficient officers, bureaucracy cannot add to corruption. Bureaucracy is just a way of getting things done proper way, in a proper way. That is, after doing this, now you want to employ people. You must call them for interview. If it is a very competitive job, you may give them a written test. When you mark it, then invite a shortlist and invite people for interview. In the case of administrative officers, so many series of interviews called extensive interview. So you do oral interview, you do interview that involves them writing minutes and things like that. And at the end of the day, you do interviews for the final commission interview. And by the time you finish all those, you find out that you are able to get the proper people. That is, if you don't have problems with, this is my brother, he must come in, this is my sister. If you don't have that, definitely you know the good ones. It will be very obvious. So that is bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is not a, for example, let me tell you something about bureaucracy that you don't know. When I was in service, I had a policy of a file not spending more than a day on my table. Any file, except it involves something that is very, very serious that needs additional work. But if it's just writing a minute on it, within a day I will write it. At the point, I got a computer and a printer. So the idea of giving the thing to a typist or secretary to delay will not come in. If it was something very urgent, I will input it myself, I print it myself and sign. So that is still bureaucracy. It doesn't lead to delay. But if somebody is not effective, you will say, it's not my job to type, it's not my job to...
Well, now we have cases of files spending months on on the table.
You see?
And before you get to even know what's happening, at times you get to hear that some files are missing.
Well, you see, the idea outsiders have about the service is so terrible. And we who have been there need to explain to make things clearer. Files do not just get missing. In most cases, they are due to carelessness on the part of those people in the registry. They may misdip the file. That is, instead of putting it in, maybe it's 485, they now going to put it in 465. So that will involve searching the entire place to get that single file. I'm not saying that some people may not mischievously hide files. I'm not saying that.
Okay.
People like that exist everywhere. Even in your station, if you look at it very well, if anybody feels aggrieved or for whatever reason or the other, it may work across purposes. But those people are very few. But people who deliberately hiding files. Of course, there was also indolent officers who will not sit at their tables. They'll be going around. But usually, during our time, our senior officers then knew those people and they will not put them in sensitive places. Yes.
Now, Alhaji, let us go a step further in this anti-corruption war.
Okay.
And there are so many instruments available for a very patriotic Nigeria now to report cases of corruption to the federal government. The Ministry of Finance has put in place a whistleblower policy in collaboration with the anti-graft agency, EFCC. Would you say that the civil service or civil servants, top civil servants, will tap into this opportunity to make sure that they get rid of corruption or report cases of corruption on the part of their employers who are the politicians?
Well, I don't know how that works out. Because to start with, as a civil servant, you sign oath of secrecy. If you have anything that is not going the way it should go, you have officers ahead of you to report to. Even if it is something that is unscrupulous, you can report to those people and hope that they will take the right decision. Because don't forget, you see, something that kept civil servants on their toes then was this issue of gratuity. Many of them have spent 20 years and they're looking forward to taking gratuity. So they don't want anything that will come and stop. Because if they get dismissed, they're not entitled to anything. So they are on their watch. So they don't want anything to tarnish their image. So that's additional something that curbs them on those practices. But even as you're talking about corruption, Ogun State is fairly all right. Ever since people started shouting, I don't think we have recorded. I mean, in fact, I can't bring out any except the little probes here and there. We did one in Ministry of Education, and we got some people who tried to be funny with the payment of school certificates. We were able to get a few officers, and that's the terrible thing about it. If you get caught, it's serious. People got dismissed, so they were not entitled to anything. So because there are inbuilt mechanisms in the civil service that should ensure that people behave.
Now, it's a good thing that the civil servants themselves are trying to approach the civil service of corrupt elements. But one area of concern is the political leadership of a particular state, for example. Is it out of place for a permanent secretary or the head of service who definitely, though appointed by the governor, to actually report a corrupt practice by that same governor to an anti-graft agency?
Well, I'm just trying to visualize any situation like that, because governors are very senior people. They know how to conduct themselves, and if they want to do many of the things, they consult and they are advised. But if anybody refuses to get advised, what we used to do then would be to leave him, hoping that somehow some people will probe him and get the, what do you call it, for this hanky-panky. But now that you have whistleblowers, only people who work closely with them can be in that position. And those people will be very few, because the majority of people work far away. They work in ministries, they don't work in that office. And no governor is stupid enough to do things like that carelessly. So, but I can't rule it out. If anybody sees, I was close to a few governors. I was at the time director of protocol. I was director cabinet and permanent secretary. But I didn't see any case that anybody can report like that at that time. The thing is becoming more alarming by the day. And even so, I don't think much of that can be found in the state.
Now, the major concern of some Nigerians is that, just like I alluded to, some civil servants may have tried to at least report a case of a sharp practice somewhere by a politician or by a political appointee.
Yes.
Has there been cases of victimization of such a person that you have in your own experience?
It's difficult for me to remember any case of victimization. Politicians are very wise. If anybody does not go along with them, they will just ask for that person to be posted away. Even if he misbehaved, if it's fraudulent, they will say, I don't want anybody to say I'm the one who sent somebody out of work, and all. You see that Yoruba attitude. They just ask for that person to be posted away. But for somebody seeing bad behavior, I was not opportune to serve under anybody like that until the time I retired.
Now, one issue that, or one requirement that people believe that civil servants need is training, orientation, and reorientation. Would you say the lack of it in recent time has been responsible for the laxity, for the inefficiency, and the sharp practices that you see in the civil service?
Well, the training was not very common towards these last years. Definitely before, there was opportunity for a lot of trainings, both local and foreign training. But I don't think that was the major reason, because there are other reasons staring you in the face. If you don't get funds to even get electricity to your office, if the office does not have water and you have to be going to the bush toilet, what do you expect? When you can work on your computer, you can print, you need electricity. So these are basic things. And anybody who doesn't have a chair to sit on, can you assign an assignment? You can't. So there are more basic things. But with this problem of inadequacy of funds, and when salaries are being paid with difficulty, you won't begrudge anybody. You look at our state, it's doing well, to all extents and purposes. Because you look at other states, they are owing 6 months, 8 months, and so on and so forth. But this one is paying, except that it's just not paying the deductions, which are part of salaries anyway. So there are greater problems. But if we add training, definitely it will enhance their work.
Alright, if you're just joining us, it is Citizens Forum on the Daybreak Show this beautiful Wednesday morning. And what we are looking at is anti-corruption war, the role of the civil service. How complicit is the civil service, and how can we rejig that particular arm, so to speak, of governance? Alright, we'll have to go to break now. For the national news at 10. After the national news, our guest this morning on the show, Alhaji Abdul-Fatai Opebiyi, retired permanent secretary in the Ogun State Civil Service, will still be here in the studio. Stay with us, we'll be back. Back is still Citizens Forum on the Daybreak Show this beautiful Wednesday morning, the 12th of April 2017. This morning, we will continue to look at ways of fighting corruption to a standstill in Nigeria, the anti-corruption war, and the role of the civil service in this fight. We have in the studio a retired permanent secretary, a top civil servant in Ogun State, Alhaji Abdul-Fatai Opebiyi. Alhaji, we've talked about factors responsible for these problems that we've highlighted. Of course, the peculiarity of politicians stifling the growth of the civil service. But one thing that we've not discussed that I want us to quickly look at are the ways that we can actually get out of this problem. What are the solutions? What must we do to actually tackle this?
Well, thank you very much, Toby. Well, the way out is first of all to tackle the rot in society. And I'll describe it as drastic reorientation in the value system. The value that we have placed on money should be de-emphasized. We can do this in several ways. The government can lead the battle by basing recognition on people's educational qualification, their expertise and skills. Also, when they confer honors on people, it should be based on those factors also, as opposed to man no man and the relationship with the powers that be. The people in the society should also scrutinize wealth. I hinted at one thing when we started, that in our local setting, I grew up in Yewa, Bogila to be precise. If you saw anybody whose source of wealth is not very clear, you are always very, very scared of people like that. More than that, you don't recognize them. But you see, things have changed now. When they see people riding very big cars, even if they don't know the source, if it's doubtful, even, they don't care. But those days, we look at them with scorn. This person that's riding a big car without doing anything tangible. So that's one of the things. Also, we should embark on transparent conduct of affairs in both private and public sectors. Apart from that, we can look at all these other things. The politicization of the service. We allow the people in the service to do their work. If we need to recruit, we recruit based on merit and qualification. We don't recruit. You can decide that you want to recruit 90% of people from this state and maybe others from other sundry states. But the emphasis will be on experience, qualification, and relevance to the work we're doing. You see, even nowadays, you see people clamoring the dichotomy between HNT and ONT and the degree and all that. Do they even look at the content? People are they're quarreling over salaries. They don't know what makes up the salary. Even the headship of institutions. Is it a doctor that should head hospital? Is it a pharmacist? Is it so on and so forth? Even a sweeper wants to become a PS. Because we too, we went to university, we did environmental studies, we had a degree. Whereas what makes up a salary is job content, qualification, relevance of the person to that post. So we should go back to all those. Everybody should be satisfied with the way he has decided to join. If you join a corporation like yours now, be satisfied becoming the director or general manager if you are lucky. Don't be looking at becoming permanent secretary, because that's not even your line. Whereas what do we find out? People who are in UGPC, UGTV, they want to finish being general manager and then become permanent secretary. That's not done. People in the local government, after becoming sole administrator, they want to become permanent secretary. Permanent secretary is not in their line. Because once you continue mixing things like that, you will never get to where we're going. Let us go back to doing things as it's supposed to be done. Now the emolument of civil servants. People look at it and say, how many civil servants do you have? A few thousands. Whereas I'm brought here to look at the fate of millions. It's true. But you use those few thousands to do the work and satisfy those millions. So they should be given a priority. If nothing is possible in force of all pay salaries, it is then you start about tarring roads. You tar roads and people are not getting paid. How do you reconcile that? Apart from that, the instruments, just to not to consume too much of your time, the public service rules, the financial administration, the constitution, and other things like that. You use them strictly to judge cases of misbehavior or misconduct in the civil service. And you allow the different organs of the service to tackle the issue of conduct in the service. So if people know that if they misbehave, they'll be dealt with, definitely that would deter them from engaging in terrible behaviors. I think those are a few of the things that we need to look at.
Now, you raised a very cogent point, two cogent points that I want us to quickly elaborate upon before we open the studio lines and other platforms for contribution. The first is the issue of civil servants trying to become card-carrying members of a political party, especially that of the party in power, because they believe that with it comes some perks and privileges and all that. Is that necessarily a bad thing to do?
Definitely, it is. In fact, if it is known that anybody, any civil servant, is a member of the party, that is enough for him to be dismissed from the service. But who will do the dismissal? When the other people will ratify the thing above.
And they are direct beneficiaries.
Whereas it is better to allow people like that to leave the service and then go to the political assembly. They are so useful.
Okay, one issue that you also raised is the issue of emoluments. It's the popular saying is that an hungry man is an angry man. But would you say that's enough excuse for many civil servants to engage in corrupt practices?
If it is not enough, what is enough? Look at me now. I'm a retired veteran. Today is the 12th of the month. I haven't got the pension for the last month. It's good if you're a permanent secretary. But suppose you are a clerical officer, a principal or something, and the money is barely enough for you for a few days.
And then you're not even being paid.
And you can't go to anybody to be begging. People will just be spiting you or be dodging you. So it's a very crucial thing. That is the nerve center of that person. If you cut off the supply, it's like killing that person. So
morally and psychologically, you won't be balanced.
It's a very crucial thing.
All right, it's time for for us to accommodate your own contributions, comments, and questions as and where. You can be part of this in 4 different ways. You can call our studio lines at 0809 868 7344 and 0909 146 9670.
I want to greet the retired servant in the house, the former permanent secretary. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, although I've listened to you, in the and I want to give it to you. You are spoken well, like an elder statesman. Yes, I want to go into the meeting of the reason why there is endemic and pandemic, corruption in the civil service. Although we about corruption yesterday in the church, I believe that corruption is in everywhere. But in every system, we have the good, bad, and ugly. We have some civil servants that no matter the intimidation or the harassment by all these so-called politicians for them to compromise, yes. And I believe that the reason why there is endemic corruption in the civil servant is because of the fear of the unknown. I was talking to one. Hello?
Yes, we're with you.
I was talking to one, retired civil servant yesterday. The man was lamenting how he got to Pencom, how they were trembling. They are just adjoining him to come today, come tomorrow. People are scared because of the fear of the unknown. And that's taking me to better welfare package for the civil servant. In order for corruption to be reduced to the barest minimum among the civil service is better recruitment of workers. I want the government to introduce 13-month salary at federal and the state and even the local government level. And there must be festive allowance for the civil servants, like illegal allowance. Now, Easter is coming now, and average civil servant doesn't know how to spend the Easter now because there is no money. A lot of government state governments are owing. What are we talking about? Most of these things, encourage and hate and base corruption because to every action there must be the action. So the government must implement policies that will make every civil servant future to be secured. Because most of us that are working now, we are working with apprehension. We don't know what the future holds for us. The government must look critically into this. Thank you, sir. Good morning.
Okay, thank you. All right. We have someone on the line already. Alhaji, I want to quickly react to this first set of calls.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joseph. You have Mr. Olumide. Talks about civil servants being lazy, wanting to be a stooge because they have skeleton in their cupboard, and they want to perpetrate themselves in office. The question is, how can we retrain our civil servants not to become a stooge? Well, we have already talked about it. Civil servants are not meant to be lazy. In fact, idleness is an offense in the civil service, which is punishable. Same thing with malingering and other things like that. But how do lazy people find their way into the service? We come to this issue of nepotism. There's something wrong about being lazy at the onset, but the condition of the work will force them to be active when they are given duties. And if they fail to do it, as time goes on, they will be receiving queries upon queries until they are forced out when the clients are good for that. Now, the simple answer is that we have to go back to the basics and treat people as they deserve. Anybody who doesn't do his work well has to be treated appropriately according to the provisions of the civil service, public service rules and regulations. Shurunke was asking what can be done to improve the lot of civil servants' productivity. He said in the past the challenge was between Ijebu and Egba. Now the challenge is between the people and the politician. Which is better? As a civil servant, I don't know which is better out of the two. I will cast my lot for somebody who does his work well, because that is why he's been employed. As for being Ijebu, Egba, or Yewa in my case, that doesn't have anything to do with it. As a civil servant, It will help the current government to carry out its policies and deliver the promises to the populace. Chima Akeron was told to call back, he couldn't get across. Ayobode talked about the past, the post of PS politicized, talking about somebody from Ministry of Health, principal, turning to be a PS, not a politician. Well, to start with, the post of permanent secretary is quasi-political. When you become a permanent secretary, you do slightly more than a civil service job. But that doesn't turn you into a politician. You are essentially a public servant or a civil servant. As for the principal in the Ministry of Health becoming a permanent secretary, if you want to go into that, that's a topic for another day. That's professionals becoming permanent secretaries. Before, it used to be the preserve of administrative officers. But as time went on, education officers, even medical doctors, and all the lots also wanted to be permanent secretaries. So whether you agree with this or not, it led to a change in the policy of government. At the time, people just thought there was nothing terrible about becoming a permanent secretary. That it's just coordinating the work of other people. But I tell you, somebody who has been an administrative officer right from grade level 8 and has done the job of administration for 30 years before he becomes permanent secretary, will you compare that person with somebody who has been doctor all his life and gets to the place? Definitely there will be a difference. I think the better thing would have been to make everybody master in his trade. If you have a way to pay senior doctors the salary of a PS without becoming permanent secretary, nobody quarrels about that. But to now pick somebody who is a medical doctor or somebody who is a social welfare officer and take him to budget, to become permanent secretary budget, it's throwing spanner into the works and you can't get much from it. I think let me just limit what I want to say to that. Jimmy Taiwo Ariwoko said it's the fear of the unknown. He's advocating 13 months salary, festive allowance, and all that. More than what you have said, civil service used to be better. But when politicians came, they messed up everything. I could remember the case of one permanent secretary who, when he retired, found out that he had no house. He didn't have a house. When he was asked to move out of the government quarters, he had to go and rent another house. Not quite too distant. So it was then that he realized that even if you are a civil servant, you must have your own house. So that leads to the idea of government assisting public servants to have their own houses. When you have your own house, at least you have your own car. All these things were there in the past. I could remember during our time, you would get a loan to buy land, maybe 2,000 or something like that. After that, you get series of loans to build your house. But both car loan, housing loan, everything, there's nothing like that again. So I'm talking about 13 months salary. What the civil servant needs is very modest something. Look at this salary that people are getting at the end of the month. I could remember during my young days in the service, we got our salaries on the 14th of the month. The 14th of the month, of the current month. The salary that people are getting on the 30th, 31st now. There was a time we got our salary on the 14th of the month. So when people are encouraged to do their work and they are allowed to do their work, they get, what do we call it, satisfaction in the job. But when you get to the office, you don't have much to do, maybe because there are no materials, there's no light, there's no water. I don't know what you can do. I think after that we had, I think, was that the last?
Yeah, I think that should be the last.
And Timia Road, what was the last?
All right. Let's quickly add the messages and the tweets. This one says Ogun State government owes months of monthly pensions, cooperative deductions, bonuses. Hospitals are understaffed, etc. But road constructions are ongoing. Nothing for workers. That's why corruption is thriving. Okay, this one says if the security agencies are serious, it's very easy to stem corruption in the civil service. Just take up civil servants with huge assets, including hidden ones, that their legitimate income cannot support. And this can equally work for the private sector and even politicians. Bola sent in that one. Address this.
Well, thank you very much. It's a potpourri of ideas. Some you can agree with, some you're indifferent to, and so on and so forth. Babayele, appointment, promotion. Okay, somebody started. Okay, let us start from comfort. Service rules. Are they still in use?
Yes.
I'm not aware that they are no longer in use. That's the way I will answer that question. Up to the time I left, we were still using those rules, and I don't have any reason to think that they have stopped using them now. Is there something somebody said? Nothing new. The headship of the unions have turned politicians. Well, I don't know. He will be sure what he's saying. I don't know how the heads of unions are politicians. Abayele, appointment and promotion made US not on merit. Well, you see, it's very good for people to speak under the cover of anonymity. Because even when you mention your name, how many Abayemis are in the Ogun State? Which one can you point to? Appointment and promotions are still done on merit. For example, why can you tell me that HOS is not appointed on merit? The current HOS is a very sound civil servant who are working about the same time. The retired HOS, Mr. DM, was very competent. He's very sound. In fact, he went to Kuru. So, and you know the top of the civil servants go there. So I don't see why he's talking about. Maybe you talk about other appointments. But you see, I said something when I was talking earlier, that these godfathers, they can be good to their cronies, but they know where to send them. Anywhere that they will disgrace the sponsors, they won't. For example, for you to just appoint somebody, a crony, to the post of head of service, you want to expose him. You cannot appoint somebody who's not competent in that position. And frankly speaking, I can't see any head of service since I started work here who has not been appointed on merit. Taking it back to Chief Odulate, to Princess, to Ms. Adekunle. These are the recent ones. And then to Adeyemi and Shobande. All these people are very, very competent. So nobody dare appoint somebody who is not competent to hold those posts. But maybe for other ceremonial posts, they may try to favor their cronies. Oluwashi say public servants have done. Well, I didn't get that. Okay. Murillo said something that is very important. He said, those who are honest get punished. Well, I didn't witness that. The case of people who are honest being punished. They may not get commensurate recognition for their honesty, but to get punished, I've never seen that. But even then, if they are patient enough, eventually they will get the result of their actions. For example, without engaging in any sense of self-adulation, I was a speechwriter for 10 years. I was writing speeches for the governor between 1989 and 1999. And you need to see that office, the speechwriting section, is a place That's a desert of deserts. At any rate, the governor whose speeches you are writing does not even know you. He doesn't even see you. And you sweat to make sure that he delivers very acceptable speeches. And doing that for 10 years, to the extent that people will think that you have been forgotten there. But when I was taken away from there, I became director of protocol. I see, director of protocol, you don't need to steal anything. Just go to the governor on an outing outside the state and you need to sleep there. You get a night allowance. A night allowance that will be more than what you are expecting on a normal day. You go to 3-4 nights allowance, it may even almost be equivalent to something substantial. So you get compensated. Because don't forget, when you go along religious lines, Almighty God is there. He's watching everybody. Look at all those people who are lazy, who are just loitering about the place. They don't end up well. Whereas all those people have been honest. Even when they appear not to be seen, they are eventually compensated by Almighty God. So there's no case of people who are honest getting punished. He said that you don't see what is corrupt in the civil service. It is referring to the civil service of Ogun State. Well, I haven't seen, and I've mentioned a few exceptions. But if you see, you can tell us. All of us have been listening to the EFCC, ICPC, getting 4 billion and all that. Have you got anything like that in Ogun State? Where is even the money? This 40 billion, 100 billion, you cannot find that in Ogun State. Throughout all the time I worked, I can't say, even when I was working in budget, at 1983, 1984, which amount are the people talking about at that time? And up to the time I finished, you can't claim that you see anything nearing billion. So
well, nowadays all you hear is billions.
Yeah, billion. That must be from the federal, not the state.
All right, because of our time, we won't be able to continue with all this. We want to appreciate every one of you. Cosmos just sent in this message. Membership of a political party is part of human right, and that is an entitlement of a civil servant, as ratified by law. Just as political office holders are civil public servants who must serve without discrimination. Okay, that's Cosmos' opinion. All right, thank you very much for your contributions. Those who called, those who tweeted, those who posted on our Facebook page, and those who sent messages to the short code. Alhaji Opebiyi, thank you very much for honoring our invitation. We appreciate your submissions this morning.
Thank you very much for giving me the advantage of presenting at least a different view of the civil service, contrary to what people normally have, especially people who have never seen the inside of the civil service. They are not so corrupt.
Thank you very much. All right, that's our show this morning. And join us again tomorrow for another wonderful edition of the show. I am Tobi Joseph. Have a wonderful day.
And I am Aghemerio. Oaikhenan. Good morning.